Hey, welcome into the Husker247 Podcast. I'm Mike Schaefer, joined by Michael Bruntz, Brian Christopherson, here on a Tuesday. Gentlemen, it is a bye week for Nebraska and an opportunity for them to self-scout a little bit and prepare themselves for the next, how many game stretch is it? Do they have like a 5-game stretch or 6-game stretch before the next bye?
It's five, I think.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so 5-game stretch. And then they, no, I think is it 6? They finished with Penn State and Iowa after the bye, right?
I don't know. I'll look it up while you keep
So there'd
talking.
be like 6 games in between there. I think I'm mathing correctly on that. Anyways, they have the opportunity to get better and to improve upon where they are at here as a 3-1 football program with a loss to Michigan over the weekend. Matt Rhule spoke on Monday, so we'll just dive right into that. What, if anything, Michael Bruntz, stood out to you from what Matt Rhule had to say to the media on Monday?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, you're 4 games into this, and it sounds like decisions are needing to be made. Or, I mean, we could have said that, but you got to figure out what the tackle and the running back situation is going to be. I mean, I think that's.
Didn't they? It's not to cut you off, but wasn't the idea that it was going to be Gunnar Katula, and so did Rhule say Saturday changed that picture?
I don't know. I mean, I think it probably changed the picture a little bit. I mean, my reading between the lines is it's never about ability with Elijah Pritchett, and it's about the trust thing. I mean, can you develop? And Brian and I were talking about this too. I mean, are we even entertaining the idea that maybe they're both out there? Like is this a Rhule has said repeatedly that they're willing to flip guys if it's the best 5? And I mean, Gunnar Katula can play right tackle. Pritchett played it in Alabama.
The whole offseason, I've been on the Elijah Pritchett at left and Gunnar Katula at right. So,
I mean, I think that probably has to enter the conversation a little bit. So that's probably my biggest takeaway is you're going to have to make some personnel decisions here and figure out who can help you. And maybe that's the point of the 4th. You know, you've got 4 games into this thing. You've seen the young guys. Now you need to say, like, okay, these are the young guys we need to kind of pour into work-wise and snap-wise that can probably help you.
So you mentioned running back as well, and the bulk of the carries have been handled by Emmett Johnson. In Nebraska's 2 games against Power 4 opponents, it's been a really high usage rate for him relative to any other running back in the room. Where does Matt Rhule kind of see things with Nebraska's running back situation? Where do you sort of see things with the running back situation? We'll stick with Bruntz because you brought it up. Then we'll get BC into this, I swear.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's probably Nelson at this point. You know, I think he's shown the most at that spot. So I'd say that would be my feel of things. I mean, Mosey seems like he's trying to, or kind of being forced more into having to handle a little bit of whatever Bonner was doing. So a little bit of slot work, a little bit of running back stuff. But I mean, I would be surprised if it's not Nelson going forward based on what we've seen. I mean, Quentin Ives have been hurt, but I think Nelson just gives you the most explosiveness for what's there.
BC sort of along the same veins, but also, like, why is Nebraska in this situation at running back? I mean, how they've had multiple years now to kind of build this room. They've stuck to their guns with certain guys. How are they at a spot where they just don't seem to have a level of trust or have someone capable of being your second guy behind Emmett Johnson? Or is that an unfair characterization? Am I projecting my own thoughts on that?
No,
which are exactly my own thoughts. I want to make that clear.
No, because we knew this going into the year, and it's not over yet, but we knew going in, if Nebraska's second back didn't produce at a decent level, or you didn't feel like, oh, that looks pretty good, it would be one of those off-season conversations that we would swing back right to and say, man, what if they had got this guy or that guy? Now, Rhule talked about this. He was asked, like, actually, if he regretted not getting a portal back. They tried. Shamar Brown ends up at Miami. There's a money game that's at play there that you have to consider. Dowdell left, of course, and I think had an alluring situation at Kentucky. Now you could debate
did they put their full effort into getting these guys?
Yeah, I mean
that's a real question.
That can be up for debate, but I think paired with it, I do think they have had a genuine belief that they have younger guys that can sort of develop much as Dowdell did a season ago. Like everybody was feeling pretty good about that 1-2 punch in early December, like Emmett and Dante Dowdell. And so you go back to like EJ Barthel's press conference in the spring. He reminded people, he's like, like back in before the summer of last year, no one was talking about Dante Dowdell that way. He developed into that player throughout the season. And so there's no doubt about it, though, Schaefer. They've got to come out of this bye and somebody's got to emerge like, okay, that guy is really helping things out. Now, it's possible that can happen. I do agree with Bruns. I think Mekhi Nelson is the second guy. I think Mosey's really talented, but he seems like he's been more of a slot type player for them. The thing with Mekhi Nelson is, remember, it was a coach's decision against Houston Christian to not play him. And so that negated that one game where maybe had he been on the field or played that day, he gets his 100 yards and has this sort of day Ives had, right? And then we're feeling a little bit better. The conversation's tweaked a little bit differently. Because I did think, even though it was in limited action, Mekhi, he had like a nice 8-9 yard run against Michigan. And so, I mean, that's encouraging to see a young guy against a defense like that have a play like that looked good. But he's got to be good. Because this will be a conversation that just keeps going round and round if he's not, about missing the boat there. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, it's just sort of hard to square up with how they've talked about their running back room with what we've visibly seen on the football field. And that, even if you allow for, I think Emmett Johnson's been pretty good for the first 4 games. I think he's been kind of what you hope that he is. It's just that there's not a guy behind him that has seized the opportunity, and it doesn't feel like if something were to happen to Emmett Johnson that Nebraska has anyone that can provide comparable production when they have that chance.
Emmett played 69 snaps against Cincinnati, well documented, 66 against Michigan. So yes, he had the 3.5 quarters off, but it's already been established in the games where you're playing teams that are in your weight class. He's had to go almost a duration. And think about like when Rhule's talking about the pass protection yesterday, the O-line we know struggled, but he also mentioned like getting chips and stuff like that from the running back spot. That's the question with those other guys. Are they ready to be put in that scenario against Big Ten rushers where they can pick up blitzes and do stuff like that like Emmett does? And then the problem is if Emmett has to play 60 to 70 snaps, there's going to be a play when you're used that much where you're going to not be 100 on a pass pro, and it's going to blow up on you. And so that's, I think, the conundrum they have right now.
So we talked about the stuff on the offensive side of the ball. Obviously, a big part of the conversation coming out of that game against Michigan. Nebraska allowed over 280 yards rushing, and they didn't get there by accident. There were several large busts that occurred that allowed for some of the long runs from Michigan. What was sort of the tone for Matt Rhule, who spoke after the game, but then also had a chance to speak again on Monday, having watched the film and likely have went through it several times as to what went wrong for Nebraska defensively, Bruns?
Yeah, I thought his takeaway was basically that, the big plays are a concern, but there was enough that they did in that game against Michigan's running game that they felt okay. Like we're not talking like a huge bye week overhaul from what they've done.
Yep.
I mean, from rewatching that game, when I rewatched it, it's basically assignment football, and it's somebody getting a guy on the ground. Like it's interesting when Brian and I were talking about this a little bit on the daily podcast this morning, but
shout out Husker24 daily, 24/7 daily, 24/7 daily. Yeah, that's right.
But like the first year of Matt Rhule's tenure, it felt like the tackling was really on point.
Yes.
I think it's fair to say that last year they regressed a little bit from what they'd been in year one. Is that fair?
Yep.
I think that's fair. Now, I'm curious what you're going to say where they are from last year's tackling to this year's tackling.
It feels like they're not quite to the level that they were last year. Like I think they've tackled okay at times, but I think when they've really needed to make plays, the tackling has sometimes not been very good. And
anecdotally, does it seem like I feel like they have a lot of guys that get left in one-on-one situations and they don't have like a lot of rallying to the football the way that they did in 23. Like that's the biggest aesthetical difference. And I can't back this up with statistics. It's just an anecdotal viewpoint of what my eyes are telling me, but it felt like they flowed to the ball better defensively 1 through 11 in year one than they certainly did last year. And then I feel like that's been a thing this year. Like they've had a lot of guys that have just been sort of left on their own to have to make plays and haven't made them or haven't slowed them up, or we just haven't seen a lot of flowing together. That's my belief. Am I crazy with that?
No, that's fair. And I have to say, I mean, there were even a couple plays in that game against Michigan where Nebraska did make the tackle, and Michigan was set up for big. I mean, the screen pass that Vincent Shavers blew up. I mean, that was blocked. Looked like it was going to be blocked well. Like it was a good call, and he shut it down. I think Andrew Marshall had one early in the game, but I agree. I mean, there's been a lot of situations where somebody's needed to get a ball carrier on the ground and they just haven't, and there isn't like the 2, 3, 4 guys that are getting there as well. And I don't know why that is. I don't know if it's a scheme difference, if it's guys just not getting to the ball or what, but it seems like that's an area where Nebraska could really improve is just the tackling piece of it. And it's early, I get that, but it's got to get better, I think. And it cost them. I mean, that long drive in the fourth quarter was all mostly because of poor tackling when you had a chance to get the guy on the ground and the drive. And he didn't. I mean, that was a 8-9 minute drive. So you had to do it.
BC, when we'll stick with Matt Rhule here, was there anything, in addition to sort of what we've discussed so far that Matt Rhule said that caught your ears a little bit on Monday?
Yeah. I think there's going to be talk throughout the next week and a half before the next game about the balance because of the skewed passing to rushing yards. And it never just I don't think it sits well anywhere when you have a low rushing total, but especially here when Nebraska is at 43 yards. Now 49 were subtracted to that total because of sacks. So they had 92, but Rhule did mention they have to get to, 100 to 150 is where he likes to be at least. But I thought what was interesting was he talked about balance in a different way. And I think it makes sense because if you think about who we think are the best players on this team, it's Emmett, but it's those receivers and those guys out, on the perimeter. And really it's about spreading and having a balance and finding ways to get them the ball. And I do agree. It's not necessarily like if you hand it to the guy or you throw it to him 5 yards down the field and he runs with it. You just got to find a way to best put those guys in space, and then they've got to make some more plays. But I thought that was interesting, just like the balance discussion in this case. He was talking more about balance within who you're feeding the ball as opposed to the the run pass ratio stuff. But I do think, and they know this, they have got to change the deep red zone going out of this bye. Maybe it's just a product of it. Specific things haven't worked in the specific moments, but I mean, it's 4 or 5 trips now inside the 6-yard line where there's been nothing, no points to show for it after this game. And we knew that was a concern going into Michigan. You saw it against lesser teams where you're I'm a little worried about how maybe they can't run it on 2nd and 2 down here at the 6-yard line sort of thing. And then sure enough, it kind of bit them in the backside on that first drive. And so, they know they got to get that corrected and find some stuff that works a little more efficiently.
Yeah, I haven't went and looked at the numbers, and it seems like a good thing to go do during the bye week. But I would be very interested what their passing numbers look like inside of, say, the 10-yard line, because it feels like they haven't hit on a lot of those. I mean, you have the obvious ones, Hunter and Key against Cincinnati. You had a touchdown pass to Emmett Johnson, I want to say, against Akron. After that, I can't think of a lot of completions inside the 10-yard line going in to score. It's just a lot of misses, and they're the sort of misses where nobody really has the opportunity to make a play on the ball. Like, they're just throws that have gone out of bounds. And so some of it is, simply the play calling or play design in that area might have to change a little bit to better reflect what Dylan Raiola can actually do.
Well, I mean, some of it's RPO stuff too, where it could be an either or for you. And like the play that really stung, I thought, and it felt like this is where you have some doubts about him. The first drive, 2nd and 3, when they had it at the 7, they had just had that nice little play with Barney, and Dana Holgerson was in his bag. Like, he had Michigan spinning like tops a little bit on the last few plays. 2nd and 3 at the 7. And I think it had the opportunity to be a run play as well, but Rhule threw wide to Barney, down at the goal line. And I remember thinking to myself, I don't like this, because it's 3rd and 3. Now you kind of missed an opportunity to get at least a 3rd and 1. And now you're in this compact area against a tough defense. This is going to be tough. And it sort of played out to like the fear in my head right after that 2nd down incompletion. Point of that being, it's a bad situation when you're still in 3rd and 3 in the 7, and you're worried about what they're going to be able to get done after that incompletion. That's kind of how I felt, though.
What do you think on all of this, Bruns?
Yeah, part of it, Nebraska, I don't know that, have they run the ball well down there? Like, I
haven't really run the ball well anywhere outside of against Akron.
I don't know that they have the group right now where you just line up and you're going to get like 4 yards when everything's compact that way. I also have not loved some of the play calls. I mean, we've seen the fades. We love the back shoulder fade in the end zone when it hits. When it doesn't, I mean, it just feels like a little bit of a wasted play. I don't know. I mean, I was a little bit surprised that things kind of ground to a halt the way they did, given how the play calls were going that entire drive. Like, it felt like Nebraska really let them off the hook. So I don't know. I mean, maybe they need to find some things that work a little bit better down there. I don't know if that's Dylan checking to things or what the approach is down there. But I mean, it just feels like they don't have the ability, like if you're, 3rd down from the 3, to just get in there and just move the pile. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's hurt them too down there, is it kind of limits what you can do. So I don't know. I mean, you got to get it figured out, because you got to be able to cash those in. I mean, it just has felt so difficult to this point. And it's not not a new issue. I think a lot of these things that we're talking about, Matt Rhule's either brought up during fall camp or, it has been an off-season talking point of something that they've struggled with or need to get addressed. So we'll see if that changes. But I don't know. It's felt like Nebraska in some ways is still searching down there for what they can rely on, and they are still just kind of fumbling around in the dark down there.
This is a weird sort of question, so feel free to just dismiss it out of hand as overthinking on it. Are we underestimating how much they might miss Janiron Bonner in that area of the field? Because he would provide you another physical presence to help potentially block. You can run some different subsets of plays with him. And I just think without Mac Markway, I don't think either Heinrich Harburg or Carter Nelson are the type of tight ends that are going to give you particularly strong, blocking on the edge against the goal line front. I do wonder, some of the creativity or some of the stuff that they could do is a little bit gone without Janiron Bonner, because of the blocking presence and the different way that he plays would have been in that area. It's grasping at straws here.
No, I mean, it's a valid point. Bonner was a guy you knew when he was injured, and the press conference the week after when Holgerson talked about him, you could tell Holgerson was kind of gutted about that one, just from a personal loss, but also like a football loss. Yeah. So it told me a lot that an OC with as much of a track record as him, like, felt that way about a player, and he knew all the little stuff, kind of what you're talking about, that he does that people don't appreciate. It's interesting too, like in football, we would all agree, like it is tough. In the last decade or two, I feel like it's become tough when you watch. There's certain teams in the NFL that are really good at it, but a lot of teams have trouble when they get down to like the 2 or 3. It's tough down there to run it in anymore. And we live in an interesting part of the country that was so used to option football for so many decades. And that's such a weapon, like down on the goal line, when that's like your bread and butter, but like you can make a quick move and tuck in, and even a play that's not the most well blocked is a 3-yard touchdown. And so in a way, I think like it's even harder for people here because of that history of how Nebraska used to have that weapon down near the goal line that is not there anymore.
Well, they're out searching for new weapons, and that was part of the game against Michigan. Nebraska had a big visit weekend. I'm sure you guys listening have seen the coverage that we have going on at Husker247, caught up with a fair amount of these guys, including the top recruit that was there in Kennedy Brown as well. It's different now covering recruiting than it's ever been, because a lot of these players are really what they're doing in Lincoln on a Saturday like the last one is determining whether Nebraska is the kind of place that they want to come back for a junior day or an official visit. Like you're not generally expecting commitments from guys that are just in their junior year after some of these games. And so Nebraska is hosting or bringing in a bunch of guys for unofficial visits with the idea of setting stuff up for the future. Bruns, I know you were down there with me before the game. Kind of what'd you make of just a visit list in general, and how Nebraska was able to kind of maximize a helmet game against Michigan to bring in a lot of talent in the 27-28 classes?
Yeah, it was an impressive list. I mean, 230 kicks are tough during the season to get everybody in, but I thought they did a really nice job of maximizing what they have there. Interestingly, a lot of these guys that were in and the top ranked guys, and you just kind of go through the list, a lot of the guys were here this summer. I mean, there were a lot of recruits that were in town for the huddle event. They got to come over and get the tour at Nebraska as part of that event. And so it wasn't a place that was like completely new. Like it's, you can kind of see Nebraska laying the breadcrumbs a little bit of like, okay, you were here in the summer for that event, come for a game, start thinking about official visits and maybe a trip back in the spring. And I mean, that's the benefit of finally being in year 3 of Matt Rhule's tenure, is that you're kind of able to work ahead in future classes the way that they have been. And that's just the name of recruiting nowadays. But it was a really good list, I thought. And it's not even going to probably be their best visit list. I mean, I think that USC game is going to be absolutely massive, given that it's a night game, given that it's another helmet game.
Do we know it's a night game? Has it been announced as a night game?
Not officially, but that's where it's
everybody
headed.
Over there is basically got their fingers crossed and their toes crossed that they're getting that as a night game.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I think for the first run through on a really big visit weekend, I think it was pretty successful based on what guys were saying and the fact that, Brian wrote about a ton of these guys this summer who were in town for the huddle event, and there were a lot of familiar faces that were on the sidelines on Saturday that were there for that event too.
Yeah, and the common refrain from some of those guys that I talked with that were there both for the huddle event, or I've been to Nebraska previously but not for a game, is just the game day atmosphere. I think Nebraska still has a product that resonates with these kids when they get here and they look into that stadium. Whether it was Jackson Roper or Kennedy Green, Bryson Brown, they all kind of said the same thing. Like, you walk out of that tunnel and it hits you, an hour before the game, 45 minutes before the game. Like, there is just a buzz in that stadium. And then you're kind of there as it builds and it anticipates before the opening kickoff. And then, of course, Nebraska has their tunnel walk and they have all these other things that kind of get people whipped into a frenzy. But, one of the guys, I think it was Jackson Roper's like, yeah, I was standing there on the sidelines looking at Nebraska's linemen, and I'm thinking to myself, like, what would I be thinking right now if I was playing in this game? Like, what would, And he was like really kind of putting himself in the situation of like, hey, if I'm playing, what does this look like? That kind of thing. And so I thought that was pretty interesting. I think they're in a really nice spot. The recruits don't care as much about the fan base, obviously, if Nebraska won Saturday or not. What they liked is they saw a good game, and they saw, to them, largely a competitive team that they think is still working its way up from where it was at in college football. And then a handful of these guys have, dads or brothers or uncles, whoever, people in their life that know what Nebraska football has been previously. And so they're pretty aware of the history of everything too. And then of course the facilities just kind of sell themselves in addition to everything else. But it was, I think, a good weekend. It'll be interesting to kind of go back, I have to remember to do this, but you go back to a weekend like this when we're talking next spring and Nebraska's got their visit list for official visits or for the spring game or whatever else, and just kind of see how many of these guys are going to be making a third, fourth trip back to Lincoln that started with that huddle event or the 7-on-7, continued into a game during the fall, and then they come back for his junior day, the spring game, or an official visit. I think that's how Nebraska, that's the recipe. And you got to get guys 3-4 times on campus before you really have that chance to lock up a kid who has options elsewhere that might be closer to home. Go ahead.
As I say, do you think Nebraska's caught up? Like, I think that's been the thing. Like it's you start to notice like the visit lists getting a little bit more impressive. You're seeing guys that have been here multiple times. Like it feels like it takes time to catch up when you're a new staff. Do you think they're finally to that point?
Yeah, I definitely think they are. I think having Trey Taylor helps. He's certainly been a big instrument in this whole thing and getting guys excited or getting them to at least consider visiting Nebraska or what have you. So certainly when you're talking about Trey Taylor and Torrey Pittman as 2 of your 3 commitments, and those guys are as highly rated as they are, it looks good for next year. I think what is sort of going to be interesting to me is how they finish out this 26 class. At the time of which we're recording this, Devon Bonwell-Witt just decommitted from Nebraska's class. That's a wide receiver that we sort of were anticipating that was going to happen for a while now. I don't think that they're looking to necessarily replace him with like a 1-to-1 comparison or anything like that. But I do wonder, you're at 11 commitments, you're in the 70s in the recruiting rankings. Like, there wasn't anybody there on Saturday. Logan Ray was the 2026 visitor who's a friend of Rex Waterman. It's unclear if he's being recruited heavily by Nebraska or if he was just kind of there hanging out with his friend because he had the opportunity to take the trip and got invited along. I am very interested how they close this out, or the remaining spots in this cycle are just going to be earmarked for the transfer portal. And then what does that look like in the future? Can Nebraska build 15-person classes and then fill out the rest of it with the portal, and it's at the best of both worlds for them? So I think we're still very much trying to figure out how Matt Rhule wants to build a roster in this sort of different era of college football, because it's going to be very different than what he did at Temple and Baylor, where a lot of their success was built on identifying and evaluating, developing, and turning those guys loose. You're going to have some of that, but you're also at a place where the expectation is that it shouldn't need 3 years for a guy to be able to come in and be competitive and prove that he can play for you in Big Ten football. So it's a tough needle to thread, and I'm fascinated to see how they're going to do it.
I think we should have the sandwich rankings now on recruiting classes where it's the portal, that class, the other portal on each side of it. I think that's like the whole, like right now, I know they're ranked 70th or whatever in this current class, but it's like, what did they get this last December and then this next December around that? To me,
that's interesting, because in the way that you said it, I thought you were getting to something that I've talked about previously, which is recruiting classes shouldn't be just viewed as an individual thing. it should be compared with what you had done in the previous cycle or what you're going or attempting to do in the next cycle. Like really recruiting probably needs to be viewed in like a 2-year window instead of just each individual cycle. And I think that's sort of what you're also saying with the sandwich analogy.
I thought you were just going to rate sandwiches, which I was also.
I'm sorry.
Well, it's been a long time since there was sock talk, so I think
Yeah.
sandwich talk would have gotten people pretty fired
It's a bye week. Let's talk sandwiches.
So let's start with this. BC, if you're making a perfect sandwich, what bread are you going with here? Are you a hoagie guy? Is it a sandwich bread? Like what are we looking at? Is it toasted?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of the name of the bread I use. It's what is that?
Ciabatta buns?
No, good. Talk amongst yourselves a second.
Sourdough?
No,
I go sourdough, by the way.
He said no, really harsh on sourdough, as if he would never even consider
keep talking
letting
about
sourdough just hang out in his bread box.
You feed that stuff to seagulls.
Okay. I got a little help. I like, thanks to my wife.
Pita? Is it a pita?
I like the Rotella's.
Vienna.
I do everything off of this. And I think the best grilled cheese, I know we're talking that might not be considered even a sandwich to some people, but this is the best bread for grilled cheese. I will swear by it.
Did the people at Rotella's pay for that endorsement?
No, I'm sorry if you have to
like blur
it out. Yeah, sorry.
Is Vienna also the best Billy Joel song?
No, it's not. But it's the best bread for grilled cheese. I'll put that down any day.
Wow. Okay. All right. Well, I wasn't expecting to get into Vienna bread and grilled cheese bread rankings either here on this, but you never know what you're going to find.
Should have seen the look from my wife, see me struggling with trying to name the bread, and she's like, "Here, here's the bread."
Shouting from across, it's Vienna.
Also, good on her for having to sit there and listen to this podcast.
Yeah.
By the way.
She's heading out, but she caught enough of it to know she doesn't need to listen to any more of it.
Well, you, dear listener, hopefully are going to stay with us for the big finish here. The guys were over talking with Nebraska basketball. They were supposed to have a Friday practice hoop session in the rail yard. I don't know what it was. It wasn't going to be a scrimmage, was it?
Shoot some threes, right?
Yeah, sort of a get to know you deal with the fans of some hoop setup. It got rained out, but they signed autographs.
So you got the opportunity to kind of visit with, I assume, Hoiberg and some of the players. Walk us through what we need to know about Nebraska basketball. A little less than a month out from the exhibition game they got on, I think, the 18th.
Yes, against BYU. Today was more of just an open access for some video and photographs with media, but Hoiberg and Braden Frager and Asijan talked last week. I thought it was notable, first off, that Frager was one of the guys that came up last week. As a redshirt freshman. He's one of the great curiosities, I think, on this team. His senior year of high school
guy, right?
Yeah, Lincoln Southwest senior year of high school. I was sort of I don't know, like kind of, with his numbers and stuff like that. But behind the scenes over the last year, really built his body up, and they need him to actually be like a little bit of the toughness factor for this team, which is an interesting role for a younger guy. But I think he needs to bring some of that as like a Jawan Gary type of guy who can give you some hustle plays and things of that nature. He's a gym rat.
So are you calling Nebraska soft like Vienna bread? Is that what I understand?
Not at all. I'm saying I think Hoiberg would agree it's a question they have to answer. Maybe I'm speaking out of turn, but they have to. It's been said, hey, they're going to have 4 or 5 shooters on the floor at all times, and you feel like that's going to be a nice improvement from last year. But it's like you get and you give sometimes with roster changes. And I think the question that they have to answer and can answer is, can you be that tough type of team on the boards, physically getting the loose balls in the Big Ten with the guys you have? And so that's where I think like a guy like Frager could be useful. Obviously you need 4, 5, 6, 7 of those guys. But I think he's a young player who has a little bit of that potential nastiness and confidence to him that he can do that. So I think he's going to be in the rotation at least, and that'll be interesting to watch.
What have you sort of heard? What are your kind of thoughts on what is a realistic thing to expect with Brink Mast in 25, 26? I mean, is it just going to be full go right away? Like, is that a guy that's going to be playing 25, 30 minutes every game? Or are they going to have to like work him into things? And then additionally, is he already the most valuable player on Nebraska's roster?
Yeah. Where Brunts can speak to seeing him run around today, how he thought he looked. I thought it was good. Like, you can tell, like, it's a guy who's working his way back a little bit, but I thought it was as good as you could have wanted it at this point, considering what he's been through. We have to remember there was a point in that injury where they didn't know if he'd play basketball again. I think it was that significant, and so that's
I mean, he couldn't jump at the end. It was pretty.
People can Huskers.com. Huskers, did their own thing on it that's like 15 minutes long. It's worth watching because he went through hell. I mean, to try to get back. And so it's a good question, Schaefer. I don't know for sure what the answer is. The thing is, you got to get a couple of those games early in the year too. But I think you also, when you can take some minutes off of them on a night, you're going to want to do it early on and play the long game. But there are some key non-conference games where it'd be great to have on your resume. And to your question, I saw Brunts nodding. Yes, I think he's the most important player. It goes back to 2 years ago when the coaches voted him third team all conference because they knew how everything worked around him.
Brunch, your thoughts?
No, I think, just in terms of what he's going to do in terms of facilitating the offense is going to be huge. He's going to have to knock down some shots, rebound. I mean, I would hope that they ease him in a little bit if they, given the opportunity. And I mean, it's not load management, but I think you don't need him running around out there for 35 minutes against, by game opponents. So I thought he looked fine for where he is probably coming back. But I don't know, it seems like they've got some physicality up front. Some bigger guys. Leo Curtis looked better put together than maybe what I was expecting for a 7-foot freshman. So I don't know where he factors or how he factors, but that's something to note at least. But I don't know. I mean, going back to last year's team, I mean, how much different does that team look with Rink Mast and what he,
It's a clear tournament team that has probably a single-digit seed next to their name if they had Rink Mast on that team last year.
So I don't know. I mean, I think he's going to be, critical to what they do this year.
All right, that's a little bit of some basketball talk. We got some sandwich talk in there. We got some recruiting talk. Is a kind of an old school Husker247 podcast where you get a little bit of everything and you don't even realize it. And so throw it back here during the bye week. Of course, we'll have plenty of Husker247 sports content here throughout the week. We got the Husker247 daily podcast. I think there might be another podcast later in the week. There obviously is no hype cast with the bye week. I want to finish with this though. So rarely do the three of us get the opportunity to just sort of sit back and watch college football and enjoy a game in the middle of the day or in the morning. And perhaps you already have your weekends filled with other stuff, but is there a game that you're excited about? Because Nebraska's bye week comes at a nice time because there's a lot of interesting college football games on Saturday. So is there one that you guys are more excited about than another? Brunch is already shaking his head. It's probably starting at about 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. No, it's not a late one.
I want to know if our boys are going to bring it home. It's Ryder Cup week.
Jeez.
Buckle up.
Help me out here. Give me a football game.
Well, I seriously.
This is like when we would have to pick a player of the game, and you would always pick the offensive coordinator of the other team. Just the most unhelpful thing imaginable. All right.
You know how everybody always complains.
Look through the schedule. Come back to me.
Everybody always complains Nebraska doesn't fit like in the Big Ten, and it sort of always gets thrown out there. But I have to acknowledge, I only look at the Big Ten games now, mostly. Like I'll occasionally dance over, but there's enough teams in the league that. So the games that I'm looking at, Indiana, Iowa, partly because Signetti dropped a SIG bomb, where he said this is going to be much tougher than Illinois was. Basically, he's become kind of a quote treasure in this league. USC, Illinois is interesting. Oregon, Penn State is the game, though. Yeah, Oregon, Penn State at night.
Here's one for you sickos, though, if you're ready. Midday.
Thanks for finding a football game for us.
Yeah, I got two. Oregon Penn State was one. How about this one? Sticking in the Big Ten, UCLA at Northwestern. 2:30 kick. Central.
Both on Nebraska's schedule, and I would be lying to you if that wouldn't be on a quad box for me somewhere out of just morbid curiosity about what those teams are potentially going to have this year. Tim Skipper's first game. Brunts is all in.
Yeah, here's a good one too for you late night degenerates. BYU at Colorado kicking off at 9:15 Central on ESPN. So that probably means the usual
BYU
crew's gonna be out there.
What is BYU this year?
Number 25 BYU.
Yeah, they've been pretty good so far.
I'm proud of Brunts. I thought he was just going to come back and name like pairings for the Ryder Cup, like Sheffler.
That actually would have been very funny.
Morikawa's got to show up. Morikawa's got to show up.
The United States is going to roll, right?
Man, I don't know about that.
It's a home. It's at home. I like that. That's a good one. But need to show a little backbone this year. They kind of got it taken to them in Italy.
Yeah, I feel like when it's on the home turf, though, they tend to just kind of play well. Maybe I'm misremembering.
No, it's been that way. The home team has dominated lately.
Yeah.
And there's going to be people are just like over the top rowdy at this one. It's going to be a different level. But
the ticket prices, I'm told, are quite high.
If you paid $750 to get in, I would hope you'd be a little rowdy. I'd be rowdy if I was paying that much.
You got to get in John Rahm's face.
They're planning on being rowdy. That won't be the problem for them. I know that. Yeah, that'll be fun this weekend as well. Brunts, I'm sorry I got mad at you.
No, you're fine. I hadn't looked at the college football schedule yet. I was laser focused on our boys.
Appreciate that. I appreciate you putting America first. That's what we do at Husker247. We put America first, college football second. So, remember that when you're thinking about us. So we will have plenty of content throughout the week. We've got more recruiting stuff. I'm hoping to catch up with even more of these visitors that were here. I feel like we've already got a handful of them, but there was 35 plus recruits that were in attendance and a handful of commitments for each class. Claude and Puma just dwarfed every coach that came over to dap them up before the game. Nebraska could use certainly a tackle, a real tackle, not someone that's just playing the position because they got to have somebody there, but an actual honest to God tackle. So we'll see if that's what he develops into. So plenty of content at Husker247.com. So be sure to check that all out. And we'll have the daily pods and we'll see whatever else we have for you this week. So for Brian Christopherson, Michael Brunts, I'm Mike Schaefer. We'll catch you next time.